Your Excellency, Mr. Cyril Errol Charles, Governor General, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, distinguished representatives of the Judiciary, distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, family of the late Sir Leton, esteemed friends from home and abroad. The universe has its own way of paying homage to the humble great. Derek Walcott, in another life, recounts that on the passing of Harry Simmons, the father of St. Lucian nationalism, that, quote, all day the sunset bleeds like a cut wrist. I am appropriating Derek in this Nobel Laureate week to say on the passing on that exceptionally rainy day of Wednesday, the 17th of January, of Sir Leton Thomas, the patriot who injected the emotion of his music in our national anthem, that all day the skies wept. And the skies wept with good reason for the transition of a man whose strong convictions were as firm as his gentility was respectful of all. It wept for a St. Lucian who was a quintessential Caribbean man, deeply rooted in his culture, but with the refinement of a classical education. A man who was as conversant with the rhythms of his roots as with the most sophisticated global musical traditions. Born in Vieux Fort on the 29th of July 1926, Sir Leton was an enigmatic public figure who did not fit neatly into any political paradigm. A conservative who listened carefully to radical arguments carefully, conceding sympathetically, but rebutting from a core of Catholic conservatism. Sir Leton had a very private, sensitive, and enduring side. Growing up, I had the special privilege of knowing Sir Leton at different stages of my life and development. As Uncle Leton, the devoted husband of Nen Madge, who was the godmother of my brother Ernie. Sir Leton was a man of humble sophistication, and himself and Marjorie were held in the highest esteem in the tight-knit community that was generally considered the Triangle, the nexus of Chaussee Road, Grass Street, and Marian Street, a neighborhood of mixed-class vintage, but distinguished not by any material affluence, but by the families anchored in immutable Christian principles, driven by a sense of higher purpose, yet maintaining humility and pride in their modest origins. This was the community of Sir Leton, Alex Walcott, mother of Derek Walcott, the Parises, parents of Dr. Paris, Dr. Carl Lacobinier, Deputy Prime Minister of the West Indies Federation, the Pierres, parents of our current Prime Minister, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, the legendary principals Abby St. Clair and Jones Mondesi, the Springers, and entrepreneurs such as Elwin Masley and Ma John. Besides the geographical community, there was a deeper brotherhood and circle of close friends and confidants that he embraced, that included Mr. Arnott Valmore, Sir George Theophilus, Mr. Bert Husbands, and Cardinal Kevin Felix. Sir Leton and Marjorie's house on the Chaussee Road appeared to us as a massive wooden house in the Creole tropical vernacular style, with his always prominent grand piano, the vehicle that transported his spirit on his flights of musical ecstasy, and now bequeathed by his wish to the St. Lucia School of Music. Whenever Sir Leton travelled, my parents would send Ernie and I to sleep at his home to ensure that Nen Madge was safe, and on every occasion we marvelled at the impeccable order of their home, a large, cavernous, museum-like place in which we felt like unruly intruders, that now in retrospect so resembles the nearby home of Derek Walcott and his memorialized recollection of that similar place. And Walcott said, "Finger every object, lift it from its place, and it screams again to be put down, like a marriage finger frantic without its ring. I can no longer move you from your true alignment than we can move objects in paintings. Your house, his house, sang softly of balance, of the rightness of placed things. It's from another life. Beyond these personal recollections, Sir Leton's resume is a narrative of determination and persistence that tells a tale of perspiration and progress. Beyond his primary education, he set his sights and planted his feet resolutely on a pathway of progressive improvement. In 1947, earning a St. Lucia Teacher's Certificate of Competency. 2 years later, gaining the University of London matriculation in English language, mathematics, Latin, French, geography. Another 5 years later, 1955, being awarded the Associate of the College of Preceptors, London. A breathless 2 years later, achieving the Associate of the University of London Institute of Education. Yet another 2 years later, the Licentiate of the College of Preceptors. Then a longer, studious sprint for 4 years, 1962 to 65, to be awarded the Bachelor of Science from Teachers College, Columbia University, New York, but quickly followed by a Master of Arts from the same university. Just in recounting this journey, are you getting a sense of the dogged determination and the exhaustion of energy that this entailed? Both Sir Leton and Lady Marjorie were career educators whose passion for learning was indistinguishable from their personal lives. All of these studies were preparation for a lifetime of service from the humblest level to the most exalted positions in the St. Lucian and later the international public sphere. Sir Leton Felix Thomas began his career as an educator at the age of 16 when he joined the staff of the Viewfort RC Boys School. For the next 30 years, he would rise meteor-like through the system as a supervising teacher, an inspector of schools, chief education officer, permanent secretary in the Ministry of Education and Culture, principal of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, and then Minister of Public Service Reform. Note, Public Service Reform. His involvement in education at the regional level has been no less impressive. He served on projects and committees with the United States Peace Corps in the Eastern Caribbean, the Caribbean Examinations Council, CARICOM, UNESCO, the Caribbean Network for Education Innovation for Development, CARNAID, and the Association of Caribbean Tertiary Institutions, to name just a few. With the professional and personal reputation and prestige that Sir Leton acquired, his expertise was widely sought, and he contributed to many policy reviews in education within the UN system. And one of the most helpful interventions he assisted with was the review of the OECS Education Reform Strategy led by Professor Errol Miller in 2000. Indeed, he had a grasp of educational issues facing the Caribbean which very few can match. In this respect, he stands tall. One could well say of him as Cassius did of Caesar, he doth bestride the region like a colossus. He received many awards for service to education, to nation, and to his beloved church. His awards of the highest distinction came from the Queen, the Pope, the government of St. Lucia, the University of the West Indies, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. His contribution to Caribbean education continued years after his retirement from active public life, serving at the international level as St. Lucia's representative and vice chairperson on UNESCO's executive board, by the way, elected by the largest margin of victory in the history of these board elections. He also rendered service as a member of UNESCO's Institute of Higher Education in Latin America and the Caribbean. His contribution in this regard is captured by the former Minister of Education and Human Resource Development, the Honorable Mario Michel, in the following words in his address to the 31st session of the UNESCO General Conference, and I quote, "We are particularly proud that as a small nation we have been blessed with native sons of the caliber of the outgoing Vice Chair of the Executive Board, Mr. Leton Thomas, who has been able to make a significant contribution to UNESCO's global effort at improving basic education around the world. As Mr. Thomas prepares to make his exit from the Executive Board, permit me the indulgence, Mr. President, to express publicly within this forum the profound pride experienced, the abundant appreciation felt, and the immeasurable indebtedness owed to Mr. Thomas for his voluntary labors on behalf of our country. The International Institute of UNESCO for Higher Education in Latin America and the Caribbean also awarded him the Simon Bolivar Medal for his invaluable contribution to the Institute, for his tireless support as President of the Governing Board of the Institute, and all his activities within the framework of the Institute's higher education program in Latin America and the Caribbean. His outstanding performance in UNESCO's General Conference and the expansion of higher education program that he achieved as President of the Institute's Governing Board is regarded as a milestone in its history. For his outstanding contribution to education in St. Lucia and the region, the University of the West Indies conferred on him the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa. Sir Leton's service was not confined to education. Following his retirement from the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, he served as Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, with responsibility for the public service and public service reform. In this position, he is described as launching, and I quote, the most far-reaching reform initiatives ever undertaken in the St. Lucian public service, a notable element of which was the conduct of psychometric assessments of senior public servants to better shape a meritocratic public service, taking into account not simply qualifications and competencies, but dispositions to service and personal attitudinal attributes. And I really hope Father Albert is present and encouraged to hear about this early effort that would have obviated his recent disappointments with the absence of service in the public service. If education was the flagship of his career, then music was his passion and great love, after or maybe competing with Marjorie. Music for Leton was a transcendental experience of a different language of the emotion. He served as choral director and organist at the cathedral for over 15 years. And I recall as a child the way in which he made that cathedral organ speak with the voices of angels. He served as vice president of the St. Lucia School of Music, even while continuing to perform as guest organist extraordinaire in many churches all over the island. But the most everlasting and compelling expression of his musical genius, and one for which he will forever be remembered, is the score of our national anthem. If and whenever any of us feel overwhelmed, whenever you hear the strains of the national anthem, it is the spirit of Leton Thomas lifting us on the wings of music to a level that transcends each and every difference that separates us. The patriotism that you experience is best described in the words of the Joe Cocker song. Love lifted us up where we belong, where the eagles fly on a mountain high. Love lifted us where we belong, far from the world below, up where the clear winds blow. It is Sir Leton's score that lifts us to where we belong, far from the partisan or religious or civic strife, above the stratification of class or creed, to up where the clear winds of patriotism cleanse our spirit. The saddest element of Sir Leton's life was that, notwithstanding the transcendental contribution he made to our national spirit, his final days were spent sadly in a void of consciousness. It was painful for those who devotedly prayed for and inquired about his health, and it is appropriate here on his behalf as he was quintessentially a man of gratitude, to recognize the consistent concern of the Benedictine nuns from the monastery at Courbaril, the Dominican sisters of Montfortune, Dame Paulette Louise, Dame Lawrence Laura, and Claudia, aka Nenen. Thankfully, he was dutifully cared for by Miss Christine Duplessis for over 25 years, first as a housekeeper and then as caregiver to both Marjorie and Leton, with the dedicated assistance of John Robert Charles, Hubert Lambert, and Michael Lewis. A very special expression of appreciation must be offered to Lucy Myers, who, with the support of her husband Frank Myers, were assiduous in ensuring that all of his needs were met, and who delivered on her promise to both Marjorie and Glovana to care for Sir Leton if they predeceased him. In summary, Sir Leton was a man of vision who provided strong and enduring leadership in all the positions that he held during his outstanding career. He was, I quote, a model of personal integrity, of professionalism, statesmanship, and dedicated service to his country. He is one answer to the prayer that requests that, and I quote, God, give us men whom the lust of office does not kill, men whom the spoils of office will not buy, tall men, sun-crowned, who live above the mediocre in public duty and in private thinking. Sir Leton Thomas, KCSS, KCMG, SLC, CBE, OBE, LLD, educator, public officer, musician, statesman, who engraved our patriotism with his music. May the angels lead you into paradise. May the martyrs come to welcome you and take you to the holy city, the new and eternal Jerusalem. May choirs of angels welcome you and lead you to the bosom of Abraham. And where Lazarus is poor no longer, may you find eternal rest and reunion with your beloved Marjorie. Rest in the peace perfect and in the everlasting memory of a grateful nation.